Okay, hi there. Welcome to another look at a question where you get a nice little STEM, section 1 explanation question. Over 90% of nurses work in the public sector. Nurses in the public sector have experienced lower relative pay increases than those in the private sector over the last decade. There's your STEM. Here's the question. Using the information provided and the concept of monopsony, explain why nurses in the public sector have had lower wage rises than the private sector. 4 marks. So here's my answer. Nurses working in the public sector include people employed in the NHS rather than the private sector businesses such as Vitality or Nuffield, for example. Private sector health providers. The NHS is a very large employer, I think well over 1 million people, I guess, and has monopsony or buying power, so I get my definition in there, when recruiting in the labour market, nurses, surgeons, general staff, etc. In theory, this means that the NHS might use this monopsony power to offer relatively lower pay rises to nurses, which is what the STEM is suggesting. And the STEM says this has happened over the last 10 years. So make reference back to the STEM or other information provided. The STEM, by the way, is what the exam board offer to you just before asking the question. Since 90% of nurses work in the NHS and social care, they may have relatively few realistic job alternatives, although some have obviously decided to move overseas given the scale of the labour shortages. And their union, the Royal Colleges of Nurses, has also operated with a no-strike agreement, until recently certainly, that limits their bargaining power within NHS trusts. So hopefully this is a good explanation for why the NHS may offer lower pay than the private sector, or the pay rises might be held down by a national pay award in the NHS relative to pay in the private sector. The NHS has that monopsony or that buying power because it's such a major employer in the economy and often subject to public sector pay restraint. The examiner comment is that students are strongly encouraged to use the STEM, to bring the STEM into the answer or other supporting material to gain any available application marks. Now in this question there's only one application mark. The bulk of the marks are for the explanation involved. There we go. That's another 4-mark question on the exam.